Creepy Facts, part 35, I think. In 1957, a man went out into the woods to check his illegal muskrat traps. While he was there, he found the body of this little boy in a cardboard box. Because his traps were illegal, he didn't report it to the police. 2 days later, a college student by the name of Frederick Benosis was spying on some girls when he also came across the body. He too was reluctant to come forward, but 2 days later he reported it to the police. The little boy would come to be known the boy in the box or America's unknown child. The body was completely naked and his skin was wrinkled like he'd been submerged in water recently. His throat was also filled with a dark substance. It is believed that he may have vomited shortly before his death, which police concluded was caused by heavy blows to the back of the head. Although the case had a lot of media coverage, surprisingly no one came forward to identify the boy. Part 2 up immediately. The Boy in the Box, Part 2. Progress was made in the little boy's case in 2002 when a woman named Mary stepped forward. Well, her psychiatrist stepped forward. He claimed that Mary had confided in him about her parents buying the boy and using him as a toy. According to Mary, her mother had been bathing the child when he vomited. She responded by beating him to death. She claimed that she and her mother took the boy to the northeast Philadelphia woods, wrapped him in a blanket, and placed him in a box to be found. The investigators believe that even though Mary was kind of mentally unstable, she was telling the truth. However, when her name was leaked, she left the country and no more efforts have been made to solve the mystery of the boy in the box.
This is the story about the blind woman who could see ghosts. So this girl who was blind at birth lived with her father on a single ranch house. So because she was blind at birth, she had spatial awareness. Pretty much she knew how far apart everything was based on what she touched. One day in the living room, the blind woman was talking to a ghost named Ellie. So Ellie said to the blind woman her name and asked her why her face was so messed up. So the blind woman then asked, "Why is my face messed up? What's wrong with it?" And at that point, the father then heard the conversation and snagged the blind woman out of the room and said, "Who were you talking to?" The blind woman then replied, "I was speaking to Ellie," and then the father laughed. Over the course of the next few months, the blind woman started speaking to over 13 ghosts. And each time she would speak, her father would get very, very upset at her for speaking to ghosts. So one day, the blind woman fell in the kitchen and had to call the paramedics. And once the paramedics arrived there, she asked, "Can my dad come with me to the hospital?" The paramedic then replied, "Your dad's been dead for 6 years." Make sure to like for a part 2.
Urban legends that will haunt you. The dead boyfriend. A girl and her boyfriend were making out in his car in the middle of the woods so that way no one could see them. When they were done, the boy got out to go pee while the girl safely waited in the car. After waiting for 5 minutes, the girl got out of her car to go search for her boyfriend, but then she saw a shadow and returned to the car. Once back in the car, she started to hear a very faint squeak, squeak, squeak. This continued for a few more seconds until she got so scared she had to drive off. She hits the gas as hard as she could, but the car doesn't go anywhere because there's a rope tied from the bumper to a tree. She slams on the gas again, but then hears a loud scream. She gets out of the car and realizes that her boyfriend is hanging from the tree. And the squeaky noises were his shoes slightly scraping the roof of the car.
5 terrifying reasons you should never swim in Lake Lanier. 1. Because it's built over countless flooded graveyards. Yes, for some reason we thought it would be a great idea to flood a bunch of graveyards and assume that nothing bad would happen. I don't even believe in like ghosts and stuff, but that is such a no for me. It is quite literally filled with dead bodies. There are countless people who have disappeared or drowned in the lake. Probably because it's built over a fucking cemetery or two. But yeah, there's lots of dead bodies in there. As of 2017, reports of countless ravenous leeches has been going up. And leeches are this really unique organism that likes to suck the blood out of you. Number 4, despite being in North Georgia, there's fucking alligators in there. I don't know how alligators got into Lake Lanier, but they're definitely in there. 5, it is built over an entire submerged town, which is literally the plot of Poltergeist. So promise me you will never swim in a lake that is filled with leeches, bodies, alligators, graves, an entire town? Yeah, no.
This has to be the worst form of torture ever. I still can't believe that this form of torture is real and is this bad. The form of torture I'm talking about is white room torture. It is basically where prisoners are isolated in white rooms, wear white clothes, and eat white food from white plates. Now you might be thinking, how could this be that bad? Well, white room torture is a form of psychological torture concerning complete isolation and sensory deprivation of the prisoners. So you see nobody else and you hear absolutely nothing except for yourself. All you get served too is white rice on a white plate. Oh, and if you need to go to the bathroom, they'll slip you a white paper under the door for you to poop on, and then you slip it right back under when you're done. This form of torture is so bad that the prisoner loses his own identity in the process. You cannot remember who you are, and you can't remember any of your family. The result of this torture is the loss of identity and forgetting everything you ever knew. You come out of this room a completely different person.
If you ever find yourself in this situation, don't do what she did. In 2006, a group of cave divers decided they wanted to film a documentary in one of the most dangerous caves in the world. But only a few hours into their descent, and a freak storm erupts on land, collapsing the entrance to the cave. In order to avoid the huge falling rocks that were coming off the ceiling, they were forced to swim through one of the uncharted sections of the cave. After they've been diving for over an hour, they luckily come across this island in the middle of a tunnel, where they set up camp and wait to be rescued. After 48 hours and no sign of a rescue, the cameraman actually starts filming in case they don't make it out of there. At the same time, one of their crew members does something very stupid.
This is why you should always lock your doors. A class was playing a game of Kahoot when they heard a voice on the intercom say, "This is not a drill, go into lockdown." The students huddled in the back of the classroom and then the power went off. Minutes later, the students heard the sound of a man screaming at the top of his lungs, running down the hallway. The lunatic man started banging on the lockers and his screams gradually got louder. He then started banging on the classroom window, yelling, "Open up." He eventually left, and 10 minutes later, a voice on the intercom said a mentally ill person had entered the school and attacked the lady at the front desk. The staff did a sweep of the school and still couldn't find him. So they locked the doors and resumed class. Later that night, one of the janitors went into the utility closet when this happened.
Don't read the comments, it will spoil the very satisfying ending. In 1999, a 20-year-old kid was obsessed with this 16-year-old girl, but she wasn't into him. Frustrated, he breaks into her house and demands that she dates him. When she refuses, he kills her. And then he kills her 14-year-old sister too. Or so he thought. The 14-year-old survived and easily identified Paul Powell as the killer. Powell showed no remorse in court and even called the victims stupid. When he was sentenced to death, though, his attitude changed and he cried and begged for mercy. And unfortunately, mercy would come in the form of a legal loophole that switched his death sentence to a life sentence. Believing he was safe from the death penalty because of double jeopardy, he wrote this ridiculous letter to the prosecuting attorney, basically admitting to every single detail of the crime, kind of bragging about what he got away with. So the attorney just takes the letter, gives it to a judge, the judge looks at it and says, "Yup, there's new evidence here," orders a new trial, and immediately this dude is resentenced to death. And a few months later, this lowlife was executed. This is why you never judge a book by its cover. On the evening of August 7th, 1985, police received a call about a mentally ill woman attacking her family with a gun. When police arrived at her residence, they didn't hear any shooting or hear any noises coming from inside the house. Police tried yelling for the shooter to come outside, but when she didn't listen, they went in. Inside was a massacre. All 5 family members have been killed, including 2 young children. One of the deceased was Sheila Bamber, the mentally ill woman the police have been called about, and she was holding a rifle that was tucked up against her neck with a gunshot wound underneath her chin. This case gained massive media attention, putting pressure on the police to solve it as quickly as possible, and so they jumped to the conclusion that this had to be a murder-suicide perpetrated by Sheila. But one detective felt like they were missing something and kept investigating. And sure enough, he found something hidden under the stairs at the crime scene that meant Sheila could not be the shooter. To find out what's under the stairs and who the shooter is, check out The Murders at White House Farm on HBO Max. The link to it is in my bio. It's awesome. This is why you should always trust your gut. In the early 1970s, a college student decided to hitchhike his way home after class. A car pulls up, a man offers him a ride, and he climbs in. As soon as the car started moving, the student felt totally uneasy, like something was wrong but he couldn't quite place it. Without saying anything, he waited till the next time they slowed down and he flung the door open and ran away.
2 years later, he's flicking through TV channels when he comes across this special interview with a death row inmate. And it's just the audio recording, so he hears the interviewer ask the inmate, "Why did you remove all the door handles inside of your car?" The man just goes, "Well, the first time I tried to kill someone, I picked up a college hitchhiker who got smart at some point and jumped out of my car. So, lesson learned, remove all the door handles." When they showed his picture, the student knew immediately that he was supposed to be the first victim of John Wayne Gacy, aka the Killer Clown, who had killed over 30 men and boys in his clown room and stuffed them into his basement.